We'll bring the meeting to order of the Wilmington City Council. To start this pre-agenda meeting, I will take a roll call for the record. Mayor Pro Tem, are you here? Yes. Councilmember Ivanbark? Yes. Councilmember O'Grady?
Present.
Councilmember Anderson?
Present.
Councilmember Barnett?
Present.
Councilmember Spears?
Present.
And then the chair is here. Okay. That brings us to the first item of business is our consent agenda. C1 is approval of the minutes. C2 is a resolution allowing for balcony encroachments into the city right-of-way at 113 Dock Street. Yes, sir, Mr. O'Grady.
Do we know what the use is going to be here?
Rob.
This overhang?
Good morning. I do not know what the use is going to be there. I do know that the building is being renovated and it went before the HPC for approval as well. I can find out though.
That would be good. Thank you.
Certainly.
C3 is a resolution dissolving the Hannah Block Historic USO Building and Community Arts Center Advisory Committee and authorizing the mayor to request that the Thalian Association of Wilmington Incorporated amend its bylaws to add city council and community representative to its board of directors, and this is sponsored by Mayor Pro Tem Haynes. Questions, comments? Public information, public hearings. PH1 is an ordinance directing the housing inspector to vacate, close, and repair or demolish the dwelling at 413 South 13th Street as unfit for human habitation pursuant to Article 5, Chapter 16 of the City Code, directing that a notice be placed thereon prohibiting its use or occupancy, and this was continued from our July 20th, 2021 meeting. PH2 is an ordinance following show cause hearing concerning obstructions and unpermitted encroachments into the city property adjacent and connected to real property located at 719 Princess Street, and this was also continued from our September 21st, 21 meeting. Yes, sir, Mr. O'Grady.
I wasn't clear on what had been removed. Do we have a after photo, or somebody can tell us what was removed? Because all it referred to in the paper was that the most egregious encroachments had been removed, but it didn't tell us which ones.
There was a large trash corral that was located between the street and the sidewalk. That was the city's main concern. It had been removed, and the city's engineering department had been able, once that was removed, we were able to enter into an encroachment agreement for the other more minor encroachments. So that's a brief summary. It was about 12 foot long and 6 foot high, constructed out of wood.
Okay.
So, didn't I read that you guys are going to dismiss this item?
That's correct. The city's going to ask for it to be dismissed at the meeting tomorrow night. Yes, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. PH3 is an ordinance directing the housing inspector to vacate, close, and repair or demolish a dwelling at 1009 Chestnut Street as unfit for human habitation pursuant to Article 5, Chapter 16 of the City Code, and directing that a notice be placed thereon prohibiting its use or occupancy. And this was continued from our May 18th, 21 meeting. Ordinances. 01 is an ordinance appropriating $150,000 from Live Nation Worldwide Incorporated for facility naming rights in accordance with the City of Wilmington's agreement with Live Nation for venue management services. 02 is an ordinance amending the Code of Ordinances, City of Wilmington, North Carolina, Chapter 11, Section 2. 03 is an ordinance amending the City Code for compliance with the North Carolina Session Law.
Bill?
Yes, sir.
Mr. Attorney, the way I read this, I guess there's so much legal jumbo in here, but it's, and I know we really don't have much option, but I do want to understand what's happening. If you look at towards the end, it talks about a whole host of things that taxis, trees, outdoor advertising, things that are any of these currently in our ordinances criminal?
Yes, sir. Prior to this session law, Senate Bill 300 becoming law, the default in North Carolina was if a city council in any city passed a city ordinance, it was going to be criminally enforced. It would be a class 3 misdemeanor, or if it was related to traffic, it would be a criminal infraction. That was how the statute functioned, GS 14-4 and 168-175. Now, it's changed. In order for the city, any city, to keep an ordinance criminally enforced, we have to specifically in that ordinance say it will be criminally enforced. That makes it a Class 3 misdemeanor or the traffic infraction. So it's changed the default. Now the default is it will be civilly enforced, fines, penalties in the nature of debt. What I will tell you is city staff worked as a committee and as a team to go through our city ordinances and determine which ones really needed to stay criminal versus allowing everything that didn't need to be criminal to go to the civil enforcement only. There is an issue that is not intuitive at all. In order to identify an offender, it is often necessary to be able to arrest them. If you cannot arrest someone and the offense is not attached to a vehicle or property, it can be almost impossible to identify a person who is an offender. If it's criminally enforced, a law enforcement officer can arrest that individual and we can find out who they are if we can arrest them. If we cannot arrest them, then you can't determine who they are. So many of your traditional, like, I hate to use this example, but it's the best, urination in public. If you can't arrest that individual, they don't have to give you an ID. You may not be able to force them to give you a good ID. So we have to keep that criminal just to be able to enforce it at all. So that's the majority of what you see in here is we've went through and we've carefully tailored it to what needs to stay criminal versus what can go civil with no problems.
So these lists way towards the very back, it's like the last page or two that has all these, I guess, ones that have been excluded, like outdoor advertising, the ones I just mentioned, taxis, curb cuts. Those, have we gone back in and specified some of those in our, or are we're fine with it going this route?
We are fixing the ones that we need to clarify so the public understands what is criminal and what is not. And quite frankly, the state law specifies a large number of areas that we don't have the option of them being criminal. You named several, the taxis and that sort of regulation. We're not allowed to make that criminal under the new law.
Okay, so someone now, I don't know, here's where I don't know whether it was criminal or not before, but say cuts down a bunch of trees, we can find them now?
Yes, but we cannot arrest them.
And if it was on, say, in the right-of-way, it would be a civil situation as well?
If it's a violation of the tree ordinance, yes. If it's a trespass, which is a state law, then that would still be criminal. And charging and what applies in North Carolina ordinances versus statutes is extremely complex. So I hesitate to bring up the state statutes that apply. If someone broke into this building after hours, that would be a trespass. That's a state law. That's going to be criminally enforced. It's first-degree trespass. Whereas many things are only enforceable by a city ordinance. Loitering for the purpose of drug activity is an example of what is not regulated by state law. It's a city ordinance only.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay, sir.
Just a quick follow-up with that. John, so I guess my thought is, what's the difference between what we had before and what we're doing now?
What we had before, criminal enforcement was available for all of these. What we're doing now is, based on the state law, we are narrowing the field of ordinances that may be criminally enforced, and in going through this, we've picked out the ones where it really is necessary so that you don't have criminal enforcement on something that really should be a fine in a civil nature, not something someone could be arrested for.
Okay, because I've seen things like riding on the handlebars of a bike. Is that criminally, that's I guess on page 035, and it's section 539, but I don't see 539 in this document.
That is one that we are retaining as a criminal enforcement, and the reason being is the identification issue that I just talked about. If we can't force someone to stop, and it has to be criminally enforceable to be able to do that. If we can't force that stop, if we can't force that identity, then we can't really enforce it. And that's something that I would have to ask our police attorney to step up to talk about that particular one in more depth if you would like to discuss that. And I'm sorry, that's an infraction. It's related to traffic, therefore that is an infraction.
Okay. All right.
I want to roll back to the previous one, the one about taking out the obstructions, and now essentially you can just do it. Is this going to meet due process? Because there doesn't seem to be any review or repeal of it.
I'm sorry, I don't understand the question.
This is the one on O2, which is we're now going to have the ability to remove obstructions. We're changing the process there.
Oh, you're talking about the prior
Yes.
ordinance to...
Yeah, I'm sorry. You
I'm
moved
sorry.
too fast for me this morning. So where's the review or an ability to appeal? I mean, we're going to do one, finish one tomorrow night. And clearly, it was a long process for the staff, but they got the opportunity to be reviewed. They had a chance to correct it, and it was resolved. But now, where's there a review or an appeal if the city acts improvidently, make somebody remove something that they shouldn't have? I don't see any. I'm concerned about due process.
That appeal is to the city manager, and this is a situation where it's someone who has placed something in our city right-of-way. That gives us, the city, a greater amount of leeway in that. But let me ask Attorney Corey Evans to come forward. She did the research on this, and she found the old case that original due process, hyper due process had come from. So, Ms. Evans, if you could assist us with this.
Absolutely. There was a series of old cases that discussed being able to remove obstructions from right-of-way. There was one case that stated that having an appeals process to a board, much like City Council, would provide additional due process protections, like you're mentioning. However, the courts of appeals and Supreme Court have determined that it's not necessary to have an appeal since, as Attorney Joyce stated, it's already in the right-of-way impermissibly. They're encroaching. And so giving them that notice period really covers the due process considerations as far as the Supreme Court is concerned.
Okay.
Thank you.
Moving on, O3 is an ordinance amending the city code for compliance with North Carolina Session Law 2021 through 138. O4 is an ordinance amending the code of ordinances for this, for the city of Wilmington, North Carolina, Chapter 4, Section 187, 4A, and the city of Wilmington's fee schedule, Chapter 2, Article E, taxi cab fares. Yes, sir.
Mr. Joy, does this go in any way, shape, or form to address the gentleman that was here about 4 months ago, Mr. Muhammad?
Councilmember Rivenbark, that is exactly where this goes to address. And the reason it is before you and it came straight to council was because council will not have another meeting where they will conduct business before January. And there's a large need for transportation between now and then. This was designed to get before council an adjustment to our taxi cab regulations that will assist the taxi cab industry with this upcoming holiday season. And I will note to council that by state law, cities are preempted from regulating the rideshare services such as Uber and Lyft. So there's nothing you can do about that. But our own regulations of taxi cabs, you certainly have the ability to modestly loosen to assist the industry that has, let's just say, had a difficult time the last few years.
Sir, Mr. Harrison.
John, and you may not be the person to ask in terms of like all the little nitty gritty stuff, Tony, whoever. What changed though? Is what I'm looking at page, whatever it is, 4-3, and it has, here's what we're going with, what bumped up, I guess, I mean, how did we improve their lot?
Modestly
I
and
was
with
about to say,
circumspection,
yeah.
but Corey Evans did the work on this as well.
Good morning, Councilmember Anderson. So in consultation with Mr. El Henaway, as you were mentioning, Councilmember Rivenbark, and several other members of the taxi cab community, we came up with these adjustments. It increases the drop rate by $1 and then increases the mileage fee from $2.10 per mile to $3 per mile. So it is a modest increase in the taxi cab fares. I believe there's also an increase of $10 per hour for wait time for taxis. In addition, it's increasing the age of taxi cabs from 10 years to 12 years. So although that seems like a modest change, it's allowing them an additional 2 years on those taxi cabs. They're not having to purchase new vehicles quite so soon.
Are you able to explain the wait time provision?
Yes, sir. So that would be if someone were to call a taxi and, for example, you were going to run into a building, but you ask the taxi to wait. That is a fee that would be charged at that point based on the number of hours that the person would have to wait. So that's compensating the taxi cab operator for their time if they wait at your request.
Was there any discussion of kind of a surge fee?
Yes, sir, actually, and that is in a presentation that's going to be before council tomorrow evening. There are several considerations that council could look at, but as Mr. Joy mentioned, we didn't have ample time to do research into what surge pricing would look like because, as you're all aware, the fee schedule can't be quite as intuitively modified as maybe artificial intelligence or an algorithm can, but certainly that's something that we would be more than happy to look into if council directed, and there's a couple other options as well.
Well, it's good to hear, because I mean, after what we've gone through, and maybe the economy comes back as it was in 19, and they go the way of the dinosaur, but without them lately, you know, I'd like to do as much as we can to you know, at the same, I don't want a phone call that I got a $150 taxi ride from the airport either, but
Yes,
I do
sir.
want to make it so they can really compete and make enough money to have cabs that are newer and are nice and make it a profitable business. So, all right, thank you.
Yes, sir.
Excuse me just one second. While I understand that we are moving this forward rapidly, as Attorney Joy stated, I also gather from your comments, Ms. Evans, that we are going to continue to look at this after the new year.
Yes, sir, absolutely. And these proposals are merely preliminary. They're just to provide modest assistance in the interim while we do further research to make sure that what we present to council can actually be implemented effectively. But as you mentioned, Councilmember Anderson, we are looking at surge pricing, potential ride minimums, and increasing the age of taxi cabs even further if council deems it appropriate.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you.
What's the taxi cab cleanup fee?
I apologize, Councilmember Spears. The taxi cab cleanup fee is for in circumstances where an individual's bodily fluids are in the taxi cab, and the taxi cab operator is able to charge that fee in order to clean up their taxi cab when that occurs.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, sir.
Anybody else? Thank you, Ms. Evans. Next item is item 05A and item 05B, ordinance approving amendments to the rules of procedure for the Historic Preservation Commission. This is mandated by adoption of the new Land Development Code. And then 05B is the ordinance approving amendments to the rules of procedure for the Planning Commission mandated by adoption of the new Land Development Code. 05C is an ordinance adopting rules of procedure for the Design Adjustment Committee created by adoption of the new Land Development Code. 06A is an ordinance making a supplemental appropriation in the amount of $2,724,800 from the Recycling and Trash Fund and the Fleet Fund for the purpose of purchasing 13 rear-loading Packer trucks. 06B is a resolution authorizing the city manager to enter an agreement to purchase the 13 Freightliner rear-loading Packer trucks from Carolina Environmental Systems Incorporated of Kernersville, North Carolina, for the total cost of $2,724,800. Yes, sir.
Excuse me. Mr. Caudle, is this straight replacement, or are we adding to our stock?
These are replacement items.
Item 07A is a resolution approving an interlocal agreement between the City of Wilmington and the Cape Fear Public Utility Authority in the amount of $972,850 for the construction of the North Front Street Streetscape Project. 07B is an ordinance making a supplemental appropriations in the amount of $1,887,850 to the North Front Street Streetscape Project from the reimbursable funds to be received by Cape Fear Public Utility Authority and from the contingency fund for roadway project funds, and this is a budget impact of $1,887,850 to CFPU and proceeds of streets and sidewalk bond.
I need to go back. Mr. Caudle, excuse me for regressing here. I'd like to go back to the track packer trucks. Is that I've been doing this a long time, but I can't remember. Do we generally make that size purchase, or is it more staggered?
Last time we purchased in bulk, and we have a situation where all of them are beginning to rotate out in terms of service. If you'd like Dave Mays to address this a little more fully.
I don't need, no, that's okay. I mean, we ran into an issue and we had to do a bulk buy, and now they're aging out and we need to do another bulk buy.
Yes, sir, and we're doing about half of them this time through this purchase. We're going to do that at this point in time, so we can get the trucks in a more timely fashion. If we wait much longer, we'll be another year or so in being able to get the vehicles.
Okay, thank you.
07C is a resolution authorizing an award of a $2,870,500 construction contract to 2A Loving Company for the North Front Street Streetscape Project. Then resolutions. R1 is a resolution supporting the preferred alternative to the rail realignment project. Yes, sir. Mr. O'Grady?
Are we going to see the route?
Yes.
It's not in this.
Yes, the presentation will show the route.
Okay, good. I thought it would be good if we knew what we were
Might
supporting.
be a good thing to see it, yes, sir.
Resolution authorizing the city manager to enter into an agreement with the United Way of the Cape Fear area to administer funding for nonprofit agencies providing programming that responds to the community needs utilizing $500,000 of American Rescue Plan Act funding. R3 is a resolution authorizing the city manager to enter an agreement with the Arts Council of Wilmington / New Hanover County to administer funding to nonprofit agencies providing community arts programming that responds to the community needs utilizing $200,000 of American Rescue Plan Act funding. And then R4 is a resolution authorizing the city manager to enter into an agreement with Bradley Housing Developers and Kelly Development Company for gap financing for affordable workforce housing utilizing $3,500,000 of American Rescue Plan Act funding. Yes, sir, Mr. Anderson.
Who would this be?
Suzanne Rogers.
Well, I guess my question is just, on this project, is this kind of, I didn't go back and look at, I don't even know if I can, how far back that was, a month ago, too much, but was this always kind of in the pro forma for them, or has this just been something we reached out to them with, or how did all this come down? At the time we were looking at this rezoning and approving it, was this already in the cards?
The developer had submitted an application, I believe at that time. On our, the city has an ongoing application process for development of affordable housing, multifamily, single family. So we have an application and review process that they had submitted through.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, sir, Mr. Grady.
Am I in the same group? This is the group down at the outdoor movie place?
Correct.
Okay. So when they first came to us, they were talking about affordable housing, and now it's morphed to workforce housing. Are they changing the target here? Are they now looking more to 80% than 60%?
No, sir. The project will be for households earning 60%, area median income. That hasn't changed. I think that the use of the term affordable and workforce is often interchangeable.
Well, yeah, except not really. I noticed that when you're not so much in favor of doing it, you start to talk about workforce. So I get a little sensitive about that. Okay. So now, we're doing this because they can't, you can't, ARPA, you can't have repayment. That's why we are doing this financing. Wouldn't it be possible to create like a revolving loan fund so that they could repay it and we could use it for further affordable housing?
In the past, you'll recall that at times we've used home funds, and we're using a similar underwriting and evaluation process for the American Rescue Plan Act gap financing funds that were allocated for housing. In consultation with the City Attorney's Office, Assistant City Attorney Melissa Huffman, who has been involved with the ARPA regulations and with the School of Government's interpretation of those regulations, it was the City Attorney's Office's advisement that we not revolve these funds because of the intent and conditions around the ARPA funding.
Yeah, I understood that,
yeah.
that because it's ARPA, they don't want us essentially using it for something else later on.
Exactly.
So that was my thought, is whether it could be done on a revolving loan for affordable housing. As they paid it back, it went into a fund that went to pay for other affordable housing. That way, I didn't know whether there was some loophole in ARPA that we could use to do that, rather than have to just essentially make a grant.
It will be structured as a lien without repayment. I would have to defer to the City Attorney's Office around the ARPA
He's listening right now, so I'm sure he'll think about it.
Councilmember, the guidance on ARPA has not been finalized. It's interim. We feel like we have a good feeling for it, but we certainly don't want to push the envelope at a time when it hasn't been solidified. I have spoke with Melissa briefly on this. If you would like an in-depth analysis, I will definitely have to get with her and get back to you on that. But the bottom line here is, with the ARPA funds, we did not feel like it would be within the guidance to do a revolving fund. The entire intent is to have these funds put into the economy to help with the recovery from the pandemic, and we felt like this was on much more solid legal footing, although we certainly understand that the revolving nature goes on and is more desirable. These funds, we don't believe the guidance will support it.
Well, you know, my reasoning is we're clearly doing what ARPA wants. We're going to put $3.5 million in.
Absolutely.
The question is, do we have to just do it once, or can we get it repaid and do it again in the future? It seems to be a further and better use of the ARPA money if we could do it. Now, of course, you're dealing with the federal government, and I'm sure it's Byzantine to deal with, but if we could make those inquiries, maybe we can make this better.
We will certainly do so, and we'll dig in, and I will definitely get back with you, council members, so that we can nail down exactly why we went this way.
So what I'm hearing is we haven't planned it that way, but we haven't been told we can't do it definitively.
I don't believe that we have, but I will check on that, council
Okay.
member.
Thank you.
Anybody else? Thank you, Suzanne.
Thank you.
Thank you. And lastly, reports, RP1, council appointments, committees for boards and commissions, and the Mayor Pro Tem is going to give us a report from that group. So this concludes the regular agenda. The additional items, Tony?
Mr. Mayor, we have one presentation, and then we'll have a request for a closed session. The presentation will be on archiving text messages, and Brian Scott, our IT director, will bring this forward.
Good morning, everyone. The city manager wanted me to bring to you this new application that we'll be purchasing for much of the higher level city style. I'm sorry, my lips are frozen. We are looking at getting an app because in the past, I think it was about 3 years ago before COVID, we received a request for information on text messages. We had our city manager over here who spent hours screenshotting his phone so he could get all the text messages and send it. We spent a few hours with the mayor downloading his software, putting it in a spreadsheet, and the city attorney helped him acquire it, and others were able to get this information. This software is optional for y'all, but we're going to have it go to city staff, and the manager wanted to make sure I informed you of what we're doing if you guys would like to move forward with this. This software will be added onto your phone. It will give you a second phone number. It will allow people to text you to the second phone number and also be able to call you to the second phone number. So when staff gets a phone call, it will definitely tell you, is it a personal call because it's coming through the normal app on the phone, or will it be a business call because it'll be coming through the app that we're installing on your machine. This has advantages for both you and, or for the staff and you if you decide to go with it, is that we'll be able to know what phone calls, what text messages are personal or business. We'll also be able to take those messages and we get them every evening downloaded to our servers where all the emails are kept. And then city staff, the IT department, will be able to take any public request to get all those text messages and send them to the requester. So we will not have to bother anybody's phone that is using the software. It'll all be done by the IT department in conjunction with Ms. Spicer. The negatives about this is it's a learning curve. It's a new application that has to be installed on your phone. And as with any new app, there's a bit of a learning curve with it. The second thing, which is probably the hardest thing, is you have to inform your business associate of the new phone number. You know, people will call your old number, you will get text messages at your old number, but eventually over time, as people get used to your new number, you'll be getting all your phone calls, text messages for business on that phone number through that app. So with that, I'd be happy to try to answer some questions for you and help you understand it.
Yeah.
Why do we need this?
Well, because if your text messages are public record, and we have to provide that to anybody who requests that information. So what this is doing is taking that information off the app and putting it onto our computers. So when those requests comes in, we do not have to go take screenshots or download the text messages from your phone. So you have to go through it. We'll have all those messages that we can sort through on our servers here in the office.
And how long is it stored?
Whatever the public records information is, that's how long we store it.
If I can make a clarification on one thing that Brian said, whether it's on your personal phone or on a work phone, it's not where the information that comes in, it's not where it comes in that decides if it's a public record. What decides if it's a public record is the substance of it. If it's, hey, would you like to go out to lunch today? That's not a public record. If it's, we need to discuss those 13 Packer trucks, that is a public record. It's the substance of it. Because text messages can certainly be used to transact public business, making them public record, the city's under an obligation to keep those messages in compliance with the state's record retention schedule. The record retention schedule itself sets different time periods for different types of records. The substance, there again, controlling an annexation record, we literally have to keep forever. A record.
John, wait.
I'm sorry,
wait
go ahead.
So I understand that. So here's my other question. We know as council members, our texts are public records. Are the text of staff public records as well? So why is it needed for staff and for council? But it's optional for us. But it's not optional for staff.
Council member, in all frankness, you're our bosses, and if you don't want to follow a manager policy, you don't have to. But we would certainly recommend that you utilize the app.
Councilman Spears, if I might, this is
Please.
designed to be a little more proactive with regard to the text messaging. We have not seen a lot of requests for public information from text messages. but to avoid folks having to do exactly what I had to do and some members of council, this would give you an alternative that would allow IT to pull those text messages without you having to screenshot those. We made the decision not to force it on council. As John noted, you are the bosses, but we have made the decision that with our newest council member, we will just issue that person a telephone number to which they can be called and texted, and just begin to rotate that into the council as new members came on board. Certainly, if council believed that they were all willing to go ahead and move forward with that, we could move to make sure that all of them had the app and the phone number was available.
Thanks, Tony, but you still didn't answer my question about staff. So are staff's text messages public record as well?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Question. This is a new app. Are there any other cities or anyone using it presently that you know of?
Not off the top of my head, sir, no, sir.
So we'd be the
But
first?
I know there are a bunch of federal agencies using it, 3-letter federal agencies that have that app that they're using, where they're showing their advertisements on how they're doing it. I know it's heavily used in the banking industry as well. So it is widely used by other organizations. I have not checked on just local governments, but federal government, I've seen a lot of, where they're at.
Okay. I'd be interested to know if anybody else is using it and what were some of the things that they learned from it.
Okay.
Thank you.
Well, Brian, isn't it, it's basically just puts 2 phone numbers on one phone.
Correct.
I mean, I know, like my wife gets work, rings one way for work, that's up, it rings another. It's just,
Right.
and rather than carrying around 2 phones is what you're doing.
Right, and you can identify when it rings, you can see, is it a
Right.
business call or is it a personal call, so.
But they're all public record, no matter which number they come in on. It's all public record.
That is
I
correct.
don't see the distinction, other than the inconvenience you have to go through when somebody, news media wants to see something. But I mean, everything we do on either number
Correct.
is open for public scrutiny.
Correct, it is the convenience to not have to bother you all that we already have the text messages. But I will tell you, for the first few years, people will be texting you on your old number, and if it's a public record request, we still will have to go to you. People are not going to just switch automatically. It'll take time. That's why we're trying to be proactive now to start the process.
But you could forward those texts
Yes, sir.
to that and start to cull it into one area, even if
Yes,
it
sir.
came in on the wrong one, you just hit forward and hit it to the other, and
And then
you're filing it instead of.
Right. Yes, sir.
You can also guide people when they call your personal number, and your message, your voicemail message will say, if this is about city business, please call my city number, and try to get people used to doing that. Some people were not here when we had to go through this, I don't even know what the arduous task, which I know it took me hours, because we just weren't prepared to try to deal with that. And I had to get a primer in how to do it and screenshot all these messages and send them somewhere. So I think it's worth trying.
And it is purely optional for council naturally, and we will help you install it and teach you how to do it, and it won't be, easy like everything else technology-wise. There will be blips as we go along.
And we'll have new cards that have both numbers on it, so we can just try to get people away from maybe not even have our personal number on there, but have our city business number on there.
Yes, ma'am.
Great, thank you.
Yeah, and we would also update the website with the business phone number as well to help get that information out if you decide to go this way.
Thank you.
And if y'all decide to go with it, if you just contact the city manager's office, we will get in contact with y'all to help you. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thanks, Brian.
All right, we go in closed session. Is that what you're going to want?
Motion, we go into closed session, Mayor.
Second.
Motion to go into closed session pursuant to the provisions of General Statute 143-318-11A and 3 and A and 5 in order for the city council to consult with the city attorney regarding potential legal claims and litigation, including but not limited to the matters listed on attachment A, and to instruct staff regarding the city's negotiating position concerning the possible acquisition of real property. Okay, we have a motion on the floor, seconded. All in favor of that motion, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Aye.
That item passes unanimously. We will now go into closed session.
Sort of closed.
Member Spears, how do you vote?
Aye.
Councilmember O'Grady, how do you vote?
Aye.
Councilmember Barnett, how do you vote?
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem, how do you vote? Councilmember Reinbark, how do you vote? Councilmember Anderson, how do you vote?
Aye.
And the chair votes aye. That passes unanimously. With that, thank you for taking an interest in your government. We stand adjourned.